You're most welcome to this particular museum. There's no admission, no requirement of membership, only a strong and abiding belief in the dark at the top of the stairs, or things that go bump in the night. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Night Gallery.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Midnight Viewing, the Night Gallery podcast. I'm Father Malone, and with me, as always, is...
I'm Chris Stashu from the Culture Cast.
And I'm Mike White from the projection booth.
And we are talking about Night Gallery, Rod Serling's follow-up to The Twilight Zone, premiered in 1969. This particular podcast, we're going to be talking about episode number 2, technically, because the pilot was unnumbered. This episode contains 3 segments: Room with a View, The Little Black Bag, and The Nature of the Enemy. And it originally aired on December 23rd, 1970. As I said, the first segment is called Room with a View. This was actually written by Hal Dresner. It was one of the only episodes in the first season not written by Rod Serling. Hal Dresner, he adapted his own short story. It was directed by Gerald Freeman, starring Joseph Wiseman, Diane Keaton, and Angel Tompkins, about an invalided wealthy man who does not trust his wife and his interactions with his nurse.
These are paintings which represent life, but occasionally death as well. Case in point, this canvas here, a bedroom, but with all the cheer and warmth of a crypt. Beneath the paint and the patina is an ingredient called jealousy. Color it a monstrous green, and call the picture Room with a View.
Chris, what did you think of this particular segment?
I don't know. It's okay. I mean, no, because of Dr. No. Joseph Whiteman, obviously. Yeah. Oh, get it? It's like a James Bond thing. I will say that this smacked very closely of Tales from the Crypt, Father Malone.
Certainly.
Some love triangle shenanigans. I thought it was okay. There are better segments in this episode that we're going to talk about. I think unfortunately, its proximity to other things may hurt its overall quality, which is that's a product of this kind of show.
How about you, Mike?
Short, sweet, rather abrupt.
Has a real knack for being abrupt, doesn't it?
Yeah, we'll talk about that as we go along, but oh boy. And then it ends. There's a gunshot, then it ends.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get right to it, right?
Yeah.
I think this segment's fine. Like, you know, it's not a story we haven't seen 1 billion times with the, as Chris, as you mentioned, the sort of love triangle was the stock and trade over at Tales from the Crypt. So hopefully not a trend going on here, but good to see Diane Keaton, so young and fresh faced in this particular episode. It's very, very Rod Serling for not being a Rod Serling written episode. It's a, bottle episode with 2 characters basically talking the entire time. And, I don't know. It's okay.
Yeah, it was very nice to see Diane Keaton so young. I mean, this is pre-Godfather. So, yeah, this was like one of her early roles. So that was neat. And yeah, to hear some of the vocal inflections that she would have in later roles. I mean, she kind of becomes a little bit of a parody of herself after a few years, but
la-di-da.
La-di-da. Exactly.
There's one weird shot in this episode where it's when the wife finally makes her appearance and we find out how horrible she really is. When she's finally leaving, when she kisses his forehead, she does this thing where she kisses her fingers and then places it on his forehead. And it's it goes to super intense close up for no good reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
Was that the signifier? Did he know, was that the moment where he decided, yeah, she's got to die? She's now cheating. I know for sure she's cheating on me. Also, why are they being so goddamned indiscreet given the size and scope of that estate? Why are they doing everything from where he can see it from the one window he's allowed to look out of? Not only are they hanging out in the courtyard making out, but then they go up to his room, which the window faces the husband's window.
I mean, hey, it's called a plot convenience for a reason.
Yeah,
okay?
man.
You remember the Richard Kiley episode where that guy from the concentration camp just happened to be in Buenos Aires in the same art museum as the guy who was persecuting him in the concentration camp.
But that only made sense. That happens all the time.
Okay, right.
Yeah,
this
true. Especially in Buenos Aires.
yeah, that's fair. This show has a little bit of sometimes it just doesn't think things through all the way, and that was one of them. Because again, it was like, oh, you have to be able to see out of the window, but
right,
nobody in their right mind, right? Like,
no.
Just go around the corner. Just
yeah,
a little bit over
How
there.
About,
just a little bit.
Go up to your room and close the curtains, and then I'll meet you in there.
Right.
Because it's very clear she doesn't, sleep in the same bed as him. So there's a bed in the house that she could just do whenever she wants it.
Yeah,
but
right. I didn't even thought of that.
Groping on him when he's washing the car is where it's at. Dumb characters being dumb, getting there. I guess is this justified? I don't think there's no such thing as justified. I mean, it's murder in a TV show, so it's not like we're discussing Jeffrey Dahmer's crimes, but it's justified.
They kind of deserve it. Both of them kind of deserve it.
They do, but the fucked thing is that Diane Keaton's going to jail for the rest of her life, just so this guy can feel a modicum of satisfaction before he dies after living his long and storied life.
Right. Well, come on. She's a white lady. It won't be that long.
That's true.
White women, the second least persecuted people of all time.
Yes.
I'm sure
below us, white men. Got it.
Oh, are we persecuted now? Oh, right.
Least persecuted.
Oh, the least. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
One thing
let's be real here. Let's break it down. Let's be woke here. Let's ruin your podcast too.
You're gonna inject some politics into it.
Oh, and I'm gonna inject my woke opinion on how much of a millennial I am. And I love cursing and being derogatory.
Well, we were reviewing the documentary The War Room, and suddenly they decided that we shouldn't speak politically.
Right? Yeah.
Basically what it comes down to.
Pretty much.
There was a line in this episode that made me laugh because I've only ever heard it one other time, and that was in Miller's Crossing when the professor here is describing his gun. He describes it as a woman's gun, which Gabriel Byrne describes the same type of pistol. He goes, "It's a woman's gun, a pop gun." I just think it's funny that it's because it's tiny, it's automatically for a woman.
Fits in your purse. Yeah.
Couldn't kill you just the same though.
Yeah, of course. The thing about when he gives her the gun, they kind of take pains to show that she's like, oh, it's so light. Like she obviously never handled a firearm in her life. I wish the character had simply slid the bolt on the gun and then handed it to her, because the way I'm imagining the rest of the scene is she goes down, finds them, lifts the gun and pulls, and the gun dry fires, and then they run and nobody dies.
It's just a car backfiring. What the fuck episode? What the fuck show? Like, give a beat or something.
They get right to it, right?
Just give us something, show. Like, oh my god, just bing bang boom, I guess.
How about cut one interaction between the characters less, and then give us a moment before we stumble into the climax?
Yeah, because she runs over to that little house next door.
Yeah, she's booking it. She's like, I'm going to kill him.
You don't even know he's sleeping with the lady.
Yeah, all she took was like a minor nudge. Just like, hey, here's a gun. You want to go deal with it? Okay.
It is a common, service that nurses supply, which is gun transportation for potential cleaning
in the night gallery. In the night gallery.
Yes.
But only here.
Only in the night gallery.
God.
Anything else to say about this particular segment? Probably not.
I think we're going to have plenty to say about the next one. The next two, probably.
Probably.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, we are moving on. The next segment of the show is called Little Black Bag. Now, this was written by Rod Serling, adapted from a short story by Cyril M. Kornbluth. And this is actually not the first time it had been adapted. It had been adapted back in 1952 for a science fiction show called Tales of Tomorrow. It stars Burgess Meredith, Chill Wills, and George Firth. It was, as I said, written by Rod Serling, but it was directed by Jeannot Zwark. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. I'm a fan of his, and I'm sure I just made a fool of myself, but I don't understand French. It's a crazy moon language to me. Anyway.
For your approval now, a painting which has to do with time. not the brief moments left to our culprits in the previous story. Their years of imprisonment were minute little fragments compared to the time we talk of in this picture. We talk centuries now, and what happens when men from one century send back items quite unbidden to men of another. We call this painting The Little Black Bag.
Did you guys happen to read the story or see the original Tales of Tomorrow?
No.
Okay, well, I managed to do all three. The original short story takes place in the year 2098. Society is split into two factions, super geniuses and the dimwits. Two super geniuses have a bet that they can create time travel, and one of them does it. So just to see if it works, they send a medical bag back in time, where it is picked up by an alcoholic but not hobo.
Alcoholic but not hobo.
Not hobo, yes. So, so he was a surgeon. He was kicked out of the medical industry for practicing surgery while drunk. He has nothing. He does have a little house. Like I said, he's not homeless, and he has a sister named Agnes. Now he finds the bag. He finds it and shows it to her, figures out what it does, which is from the future. And then Agnes becomes more and more greedy, and he creates a clinic. It's very long for what we ended up getting. He makes a clinic where he's helping everyone for free, and he has all of the patients blindfolded so they won't see the futuristic equipment. And then he decides that he can't keep this information to himself. He's going to share it with the rest of the world, at which point his sister kills him, dissolves his body, and then, it's like the end of the episode. She goes to demonstrate one of the instruments, and then the instruments get turned off, and she ends up killing herself. When they adapted it for Tales from Tomorrow, it became a husband and wife team. Follow the story basically the same, except the woman kills him, and then all of the instruments disappear, and a voice says, "No one will be able to use these instruments if they've committed murder with them," even though they haven't set up at the beginning of the episode that they're from the future at all. I don't know. It's weird. So what we end up getting for Night Gallery is sort of a combination of the two stories, except they've given him, instead of a sister or a wife, they've given him this Chill Wills as this way too overbearing guy you just met on the street who you're letting follow you everywhere and help make decisions for you. Mike, what do you think of this segment?
Boy, oh boy. I mean, as soon as I see poor Burgess Meredith, I'm just like, oh, he's going to get fucked over by fate, isn't he?
Rod Serling just wanted him to suffer,
little man. Suffer. I have talked many times on various podcasts about how I dislike when people play drunk. It takes a lot to play drunk very well. And man, when these two hobos just start going at it at the beginning, I'm just like, oh boy. I just was not a big fan. I was more of a fan of the 2099 guy, or 29, kind of enjoying that. I was surprised that it's modern, because so many of these stories that we've dealt with have felt like almost some turn of the century or like mid-century kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think, I think a lot of it has to do with I hate to keep hammering on Rod Serling, but like the level of writing tends to be like 1930s. Like he just sort of never, particularly when it comes to someone on the outliers, or it was an outlier of society, like a homeless man or something like Rod Serling has a pattern in his head that's what that type of character sounds like. And so we end up feeling like it's from another time itself. So I don't know if that's what you were saying, Mike, but that's the feeling I get as far as like this episode feels like it's much old, like it shouldn't be 1970 and we're watching this.
Oh, this is what hobos sound like, and they're probably on the back to a Hoover bill.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't have bindles on sticks.
With like the 3-year-old growth of beard.
Yeah, and like a cigar on a toothpick.
There you go.
Found this can of beans. Chris, what'd you think?
Hey, we were in the alley together. It could have been me who found it. Okay.
And there are so many times when he could have gotten away from Chill Wills. Like, yeah, I know he was fascinated by the bag to the point where he was sort of like distracted by or didn't recognize everything going on around him, maybe. But like at a certain point, like this guy's means you harm, dude. Run.
It has that thing that they can only do in movies where it's like one character is in the scene talking to themselves. And then the other character is standing behind them, saying their plan aloud, sharpens knife off screen. There's no subtlety to it. Dare I say, even inches in earshot.
It was great to see George Firth in this episode. He's the technician running the future teleportation machine, I guess. He's always hilarious, and of course, he was great in Blazing Saddles. The fool's going to do it.
He's great. I mean, he's not given much to do here, but I recognized him from Blazing Saddles.
He's not only not given much to do here, but like I found myself thinking back to that guy and wondering what he was up to during the rest of this episode.
Right.
Good Lord. And like, I thought Serling innovated a lot of things in the episode as far as like keeping it on a clock, as opposed to, the short story, he like eventually makes a clinic and he gets a clientele and everything. And then the original adaptation was garbage. So I liked the immediacy of having him treating the other like homeless people at the shelter, like, and figuring out what everything was all in one location. I thought that was really good, but nothing really happens there. And I hated everybody.
Well, I think for me, it just goes back to the idea that Burgess Meredith could have left at any point. Like,
yeah.
Oh yeah. Ultimately, when you have a character doing stupid things continuously, how are we supposed to follow you after a certain point? As I said, clearly Chill Wills meant him harm, and I don't know how he wasn't able to recognize it the whole time. So
I was happy to see Arthur Mallet, who I mostly know him as it Mr. Brisby from Secret of Nim, and I think he was in Hook and other things, but I mostly know him for his voice work. So as soon as he started to speak, I was like, whoa,
right,
okay,
yeah. I mean, I don't think this episode really brought anything to the time traveling genre or anything, and like, when I think about Rod Serling, sometimes I think like I don't understand how he had time in the day to do anything, considering how many scripts he was writing and like how many stories he had to even read to get to the point where he wanted to adapt one. So they all can't be winners. This one definitely isn't for me.
But not the last time we'll see Arthur Mallet, because he will come back in Camera Obscura.
Ooh, Arthur Mallet will return.
Anything else about this segment, gents?
I wish this segment were shorter.
Truly.
It might have had some sticking power if it had been just a tad shorter.
Mm-hmm. All right, on to our final segment of episode 2. This is called Nature of the Enemy. Now, this was written whole cloth by Rod Serling, directed by Alan Reisner, and starring Joseph Campanella. And just very briefly, as two reporters, we got James Sicking and Albert Popperell.
Nice.
Which, that to me is probably the best thing about this episode. The story itself is it's NASA just trying to figure out, they sent one mission up that ended in tragedy, then they've sent a second mission up, a rescue mission, to figure out what caused the tragedy in the first place, and that's what we're given.
This offering is a landscape, lunar and low-keyed, suggestive perhaps of some of the question marks that await us in the stars, and perhaps pointing up the moment when we'll collect something other than moon rocks. This item is called The Nature of the Enemy.
I'll start. This was a one-panel men's magazine cartoon strung out far too long. And actually, I said men's magazine. Let me walk that back. This is a one-panel New Yorker cartoon. By that, I mean it is pointless and not funny.
Yeah. When they revealed the punchline, which took far too long to get to, I was like, really? That's what we're going with?
Like Rod decided that like he thought that up and went, I think that we should do this. And then everyone else said, you're right, we should. It goes to the power of Rod Serling that nobody said no to this.
Yep. And I enjoyed it.
All right.
It was really, really dumb. And the payoff was so unbelievably dumb that all I could do was look at my father and say, they built a mousetrap on the moon and the rats are killing the people. And he went, no, that's not the twist. And I said, oh, but it is. And then they say, it's a mousetrap. It was real dumb. Rod Serling must have been a mousetrap on the moon. It's made of cheese. I will say this much. Rod Serling, I associate him with smoking cigarettes. good to know he also smoked weed.
Yeah.
Because there's no way someone sober came up with this idea. And it's because I was not sober when watching it that I found it funny. It's fun. I mean, the reveal of what it is kind of hilarious. And the imagery of the giant mouse trap with the giant mouse next to it is pure comedy gold.
Do you think they picked that mouse thinking it's more menacing because there's more of it, not realizing it was just even stupider that it was a giant fat mouse?
How else would he get fat except from my headcanon was he was eating the astronauts.
Right.
Well, of
right.
course,
That's why he's
yes.
fat.
So how many astronauts are up there? It only ate like 2 or 3 to begin with.
I mean, we talked about how abrupt the first episode ended. This one was pretty abrupt as well.
Well,
Oof.
here's the question. Here's the question I have. Is it that there are mice on the moon catching humans, or are there mice on the moon and there are traps for the mice on the moon set by somebody else that the humans
That's what I was wondering. I was
See?
like, okay, who set the trap for the mice?
Right, because like, is it the mouse's trap, or is it a trap from somebody else trying to catch the mice? That's what I didn't know, and I'm glad, Mike, that I was not alone in that. Because like that's why I didn't hate this episode so much, because like it left me with something to ask at the end. The last two have not. I was like, well, who put the trap there? And like that story in my mind is obviously much more interesting than
my interpretation of that was that the first crew crashed there, saw that they had a problem with a mouse, and then built that giant mouse trap out of pieces of their ship.
Wow.
And it still got them anyway. That's what I thought.
Huh. Okay. All right.
I kind of like the idea that an alien intelligence dropped a giant mouse trap there, though. I mean,
Yeah, it's very Arthur C. Clarke.
they were annoyed with the mice on the moon, and the mice were on the moon because the moon is made out of cheese.
I didn't make the cheese connection until you said it, and I kind of love it.
Everybody knows there's no cheese on the moon, Gromit. It's because the whole fucking thing's made out of cheese, friend. And we just found out. That should have been the twist of the episode.
Chris, I think you talked me into liking this one.
I'm telling you. It's a lot of fun. And you know what? It's 9 minutes long.
Which we can all agree is way too long. It should have been 3 minutes long. It should have been, we're getting a transmission from the moon. Oh my God, it's a giant mouse.
Come in. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, look, the issue is this is not the Twilight Zone 85 where they could do a 3-minute segment.
Right.
Right.
If they could, they probably would have, because I agree. It's a little too long for its own good, but it's perfect for this.
Yeah.
And this application. But it's like you guys have said, it's essentially like a Playboy one-panel comic.
Or New Yorker. I agree. The New Yorker is about as funny as this.
Yeah.
But at least with the New Yorker, your eyes fall on it and go, stupid, not funny, and then enough, as opposed to 9. If you had to stare at a New Yorker cartoon for 9 minutes, you might lose your mind.
Yeah.
Again, I appreciate that they play it straight throughout. And then the way it ends is just so butt-fuckingly moronic that you just have to go, really? Really?
I know, but I wish
the only response.
I wish the payoff had just been better, because, like you said, they do play it so seriously that I found myself actually invested in figuring out what's going on here. And then when you get the giant mouse, it's like, okay.
That's the nature of the enemy.
I contend, had they picked a better looking mouse, it would have been a more satisfying ending.
Maybe a rat even.
A rat, yeah. Something vicious looking, like,
Not just like a mouse that's like sitting on its haunches and fat.
Yeah.
What a cute mouse. Like, okay.
It's like,
just don't go to the moon then.
Yeah, clearly everyone is going to be safe around it because it's well fed. Like,
Well, it's because it's eating all the astronauts that it's made the trap for.
It made the trap. I don't know. That's the only good part of this episode, is the ambiguity about that trap.
Who made the trap? Why? Oh, actually, you know what? Here's the question. How could the mouse make the trap? Because the mouse trap evokes mouse traps that exist on Earth.
Okay.
So,
well, I'm positive that the mouse didn't.
Or how positive are you?
I'm 100% positive.
Did you
mouse
ask
did not
him?
create that. I did. He answered via telegram, which I thought was on.
We have that interview coming up, coincidence.
Wow.
With the mouse.
Very old school.
Right.
It must have been, to your point, Father Malone, it must have been that the astronauts built that on the moon.
That's what that's the only thing that makes sense. Other than an alien intelligence, which I like better. But I don't think that was Serling's
But
intent.
does any of this make sense, really? Because if there's a giant mouse on the moon, why would you build a giant mousetrap? Why wouldn't you just take some of the wreckage and, like, stab it?
Also, apparently, it doesn't need oxygen.
Well,
Right.
it didn't
true.
have a helmet on, you're right.
It did not, nor a suit.
Who knows what kind of technology this mouse has, really? It's like a bandolier that's like an oxygen.
True. I don't know the physiognomy of a moon mouse, so I can't really speak to how well or not he could have adapted to that environment.
Mouse.
He's the moon mouse. God. Oh boy. Yeah, you know what though? At least this show, unlike Dreams for Sale, is giving us some laughs. You know.
Yeah, I mean, at least the discussion is lively. Like for by the end of Dreams for Sale, it's just like, ugh, can this end already? Like,
Yep.
this was at least
Right.
diverting and amusing.
Yeah, and it does have that Rod Serling kind of bite to it. Stupid bite this time. Snaggletooth dog bite, but it's not the pit bull bite of some of the better Twilight Zone episodes.
Right.
Anything else about this segment?
We've talked enough about the physiognomy of moon mice, I think.
Yeah. Well, you can never talk too much about the physiognomy of moon mice, honestly.
That's true.
Father Malone's first book coming to Barnes & Noble, The Physiognomy of the Moon Mice.
Now I have to write it, unfortunately.
Right?
So overall, how many Richard Kiley's on a cross would you give this, Chris? This episode?
Oh, jeez.
I think it's like we're talking like out of 5?
Out of 5, yeah.
Like a 2. This entire episode, like a 2.
Okay.
Maybe, you know, a 3. No, a 3. The mouse thing is like a 1 star on its own. The other 2 are like singles.
Okay.
The mouse is great.
How about you, Mike?
I would stick with the 2.
I'll go 2.5. I'll give it a half. Just because I like the ambiguity of whether or not an alien created that mousetrap.
Or whether or not it's just really mind-numbingly boring and made by humans.
Yeah. Episode 2, I don't know that I would necessarily recommend straight off to somebody who's never seen Night Gallery before. I wouldn't tell them not to watch this episode, but I wouldn't say this is the first thing you should watch because they would never watch it again.
I mean, yeah, if they watch the final mouse segment, they're like, yeah, I'm good. Why did you suggest that to me? What were you thinking?
Right.
What have I told you that I like that makes you think that I would like this? I'm sorry.
All right. We're going to take a break and play an ad for the next episode of Midnight Viewing.
Our first painting submitted for your approval is an item of real estate, but you won't find it advertised in the classifieds. Oh, it's light and comfortable and altogether well heated, but there's a chill to the place. So bundle up when you look at this one. Our painting is called The House, and this is the Night Gallery. The least permanent, the most fleeting of man's proof of existence, his shadow. It comes and goes with light, hours of the day, point of the sun, angle of the moon. It is a quickly daubed and imperfect outline of a certain object at a certain given moment. This painting is called Certain Shadows on the Wall.
All right. On our next episode, we're going to be talking about episode 3 that contains 2 segments, The House and Certain Shadows on the Wall. Until then, where can people find you, Mike White?
You can always find me over at the Projection Booth Podcast, which is available, coincidentally enough, at projectionboothpodcast.com.
As for me, cstachu.com, cstachiw.com. That's my link tree for all the things that I work on, both with Father Malone and Mike White, and on my own. What about you, Father Malone? Where can people find you?
Find Father Malone at fathermalone.com. That is my link tree. It has a link to my show, Wolf and Raisin, my video podcast tribute to Banachek, the television series from the 1970s. And you can also, that's good enough. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope to see you next time. I don't really have a wrap up, but that was it.
Well, that's a pretty good one as far as I'm concerned.
That's good. I like it.